Hithpael. Let's now look at the Hithpael morphology. So here is our chart. Before we look at the details, let's just overview this and see if anything stands out. Well, the first thing that stands out, of course, is the big prefix. Now this is the binyan prefix, right? I'm talking about the hit here. So we see it here, hitpaked, hit, all the way down the perfect. Here we have yit, tit, et, yit, tit, nit. Vayitpaked, yit, et. And then hit all through these and mit, okay? So that's one of the biggest things that stands out. The other thing that stands out, it probably isn't visually that big, but is the doubling the second radical. This is partly why we group, see it's all over the place here, doubling the second radical. This is partly why we group the Pile, the Pual, and the Hithpael together. The vowels are also similar, but the doubling the second radical is the big, that together with this yit, hit thing, is the main marker of the Hithpael. Now the Hithpael is not difficult to recognize because of that big hit in the beginning. So it's not really a hard thing for reading. So here we go. Let's see what I have to say about it. Prefix tav. It's present in all forms, and it's really an infix. Now what do I mean by that? Prefixes are things that go at the beginning. Suffixes go at the end. Infixes squeeze in between things. So let's start over here. The prefix form for the imperfect in the masculine singular is, or the third person masculine singular, is yud, right? And we see that the tav is squeezed in between there. So between what you normally have the yud and then the first root radical, you have a tav. So it's really an infix. It comes across as one syllable, yit, but it's really tav squeezed in between a pre-existing prefix and the first radical. And the same here. Tav, this tav is our normal prefix. This tav is the infix. And down here we have aleph, and our tav is squeezed in there. Down here we have nun, and our tav is squeezed in there. Here we have mem, and our tav is squeezed in between. Now what we'll see here is that the perfect doesn't have its own prefix, right? It's not a prefix tense. So those forms that have, or that do not have a prefix, you put a hey in there. Now it's easy to remember because you've got it right in the name here. Hithpael. So you have hit all the way through here because there is no prefix. And in these forms where the prefix gets stripped off, in the imperatives and in the infinitive construct, it's basically built on the imperfect with the prefix stripped off. Again, the hey will show up. So you have hey through all these. Hit. Mit, or mem already has a prefix, so you get mit. Okay, so prefix tav, or really infix tav, prefix hit, yit, it, nit, or whatever. Now, I colored it here because I want to just emphasize that this group, or this binyan, does divide into two groups based on the prefixes, similar to how the nifal does, but it divides up differently. If you remember, the nifal, it was the perfect and the participle. In the nifal, the participle is passive, so I'll point down here. They both had nun, and the nun did not assimilate. And then all the other ones were the prefix forms where the nun assimilated. Even here, when the prefix was stripped off, your actually what we had was a hey there, right? And that's similar to this. The nifal, even in the imperative where the prefix was stripped off, the nun was assimilated because you had a hey there, and we see a hey here as well. So this is similar to the nifal that way. But the grouping is different because in the nifal it was the perfect and the participle that was one group. That's where the nun did not assimilate, and all the other forms the nun assimilated. Here I've divided them up according to the prefixes. So the perfect and the imperative and infinitives are together, and these forms are together. I just point this out so that you don't think that they're the same groupings. They divide into two, but it's different groupings. Okay, So the non-prefix forms have hit. That's these here. Non-prefix meaning it either doesn't have a prefix, the perfect doesn't have a prefix, or it's a form where the prefix has been stripped off. They all have hit, and then the other ones have yit, tit, et, nit, or mit. So basically whatever it normally would have with the tav infix. Okay. Second characteristic is doubling of the second radical, like the PL. I already said that. So kof is doubled, doubled everywhere. So PL, Puel, and Hithpael are grouped in part because of the doubling of the second radical. That's the main characteristic that puts them all together as a group. Okay, I already said that. Doubling the second radical. Let's look at the perfect. The prefix is hit, as I already said. The remainder of the verb is just like the PL imperfect minus the prefix. This is not really important in terms of reading. You'll recognize this because of the hit at the beginning. But it's useful to know the vowel pattern here is the same as the PL over here. The PL imperfect. Remember the PL imperfect was, well, you had your prefix, and then you had a, and then you had a. Well, the a, you have that here too. Okay? And it happens to carry through here as well. So the vowel pattern is just like the imperfect in the PL, but with a hit on the beginning rather than its regular PL imperfect prefix. So here I show you two verbs here. This is the PL perfect 3ms, so your a, and here we have the Hithpael perfect 3ms. Haha, this is wrong. This should say imperfect. The imperfect, right? It's got a prefix form there. Okay. Let's look at the prefix forms, the imperfect and the predicate, jussive, cohortative. They all have these other prefixes. I'm just repeating myself again and again here because I already talked about this. Yit, tit, et, nit. The remainder of the verb is just like the PL imperfect, minus the prefix. So again, the remainder of the verb is just like the PL imperfect, and the vowels are the same in the perfect and the imperfect. So the Hithpael is not difficult because the vowels are so similar through the entire paradigm, and that big prefix is so noticeable. Okay, imperative and infinitives. What do you want to say there? Well, what we have there is a lot of similar forms. Well, actually, a lot of identical forms. The perfect 3ms is Hithpael. The imperative masculine singular is Hithpael. The infinitive construct is Hithpael. And the infinitive absolute is Hithpael. So we have a quartet here. They're all identical, exactly the same, which is great for memorizing. You have fewer forms to memorize. But when it comes to reading, there's a bit more ambiguity. Now, generally, it's not too bad. It's pretty obvious if you have a perfect, generally, a perfect versus an imperative, because they do such different things, or an infinitive. But sometimes it won't be that clear. So, 4 forms that are the same. All these here, these are all identical. Okay, participle. Again, we have our maim, just like we have with the PL, the Puel, and now the Hithpael, and also we'll see it in the Hithpael and the Hofal. Maim marks the participle for all those binyan. The Kal and the Nephal don't have the maim. The vowels, again, just like your imperfect. So, pretty easy. And of course, we have our tav infix. So, maim, same as the perfect, with a maim instead of the hey. So you take the hey out, and you have put a maim in there, you'll have the participle. Actually, it's the same as the imperfect as well in the 3ms. So there I give them to you. Hithpael, the perfect, and mitpael, the participle. Okay, so that's it except for identical forms. We'll start with our yellow ones here. Imperfect and jussive, again, as I've said so many times before, they are the same in the strong verbs except for the Hithpael, which we'll deal with next chapter. In the Hithpael, we'll see that there's a shortened jussive. But for all the other binyan, the strong verbs, they're the same. The jussive is just, the only way you can tell the jussive is by its sense. You can't tell from the actual letters. It looks the same. And then the other forms that are the same are is the quartet that I talked about. So Hithpael, 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 Hithpael. So 4 forms that are the same. I think that's it for the Hithpael. The thing with the Hithpael is it's really not too difficult because of that big initial hit or yit or it or whatever, nit. And it's grouped together with the Pile and the Puel, partly because of mainly because of the second radical, and the vowels are actually quite similar to the Pile.